My name is Emma, I'm 18, and my parents let my sister hijack my 18th birthday party right in front of my eyes. Before I tell you how that single night led to my family's complete financial and social collapse, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It was supposed to be my night. 7 o'clock, and the house was full of people, but the air was thick with an awkwardness you could cut with a knife. This wasn't a celebration, it was a hostage situation, and I was the one being held captive by politeness. I had spent a week curating the perfect playlist, a mix of indie pop and classic rock that felt like me. It was now completely gone, replaced by my sister Olivia's obnoxious, thumping pop music, vibrating through the floorboards and making my teeth ache. The mini quiches and pigs in a blanket I'd been so excited about, the ones I had specifically requested, were nowhere to be seen. Instead, a mountain of expensive sushi and fancy, pungent cheeses, Olivia's favorites, of course, covered the dining table. She was holding court in the center of the living room, a queen on a temporary throne. At 23, 5 years my senior, she was squeezed into a glittering gold dress that screamed "Look at me," laughing a laugh that was too loud, a champagne flute held precariously in her hand. She was supposed to be in New York City with her friends, living it up on my parents' dime. But a freak early-season storm had grounded all flights. So, instead of being miserable alone in her room, she had descended upon my party with the force of the storm itself, deciding that if she couldn't have fun, no one could. My parents, bless their spineless hearts, fluttered around her like moths to a flame, refilling her glass, laughing at her not-so-funny jokes, their faces etched with a desperate need to appease their volatile, adult daughter. They hadn't cancelled my party, no. That would have been too honest. They had done something far worse. They had surrendered it to her, piece by painful piece. I was standing in a corner by the patio door, clutching a cup of lukewarm soda, feeling the condensation drip down my fingers. I felt like a ghost at my own party. Friends from school would drift over, their faces a mask of pity. "Happy birthday, Emma," they'd mutter, before their eyes would inevitably get drawn back to the spectacle in the center of the room. Olivia's gravitational pull was too strong, they'd be sucked back into her orbit, leaving me alone once more. I felt invisible, an inconvenient footnote in the story of my own 18th birthday. Then, through the shifting crowd, I saw the front door open. My grandfather. He stood on the threshold, a brightly wrapped gift bag in his hand, his eyes sweeping the scene. He was a tall man, a retired lawyer who carried himself with a quiet dignity that seemed to fill any room he entered. He didn't come in right away. He just stood there, his face, usually so kind, hardening into a granite mask as he took in the spectacle, Olivia as the sun, my parents as her devoted planets, and me, a forgotten moon in a dark, lonely corner. He saw it. He saw everything. And in his sharp, intelligent eyes, I saw the reflection of my own humiliation, magnified and validated. That single, silent moment of acknowledgement from him was the only real gift I received that night. And it was the beginning of the end for them. Seeing my grandfather's face, that quiet, simmering anger on my behalf, was like turning a key in a lock I didn't know existed. A floodgate of memories opened, not in a gentle stream, but in a raging torrent. It wasn't just about the party. It was never just about one thing. It was a lifetime of being the second choice, the runner-up, the designated shock absorber for my sister's every whim. I was 10 again, at my own birthday party, surrounded by my friends from elementary school. My mom brought out a perfect, pink frosted cake with 10 candles flickering on top. Just as I took a deep breath to blow them out, Olivia, then 15, declared that she wanted the corner piece with the biggest frosting rose. My mom told her to wait her turn. Olivia's face crumpled, and a full-blown tantrum ensued. To quiet her, my mom cut the corner piece, rose and all, and gave it to her before I had even made my wish. "She's just more sensitive, Emma," my mom whispered to me later, as if Olivia's sensitivity was a precious commodity and my feelings were a renewable resource. I was 15, buzzing with excitement for the sophomore formal. I had a crush on a boy named Mark, and I'd heard he might ask me to dance. All I needed was the right dress. But the week before, Olivia had a shopping emergency and my parents had spent the entire month's clothing budget on a new designer jacket for her. I was forced to wear one of her hideous, out-of-style hand-me-down dresses, a floral monstrosity that smelled faintly of her perfume and my disappointment. We were almost the same size, but her clothes always felt heavy with the weight of being an afterthought. At the dance, I saw her flaunting her new jacket, laughing with her friends, while I tried to hide in the shadows, feeling frumpy and worthless. Mark never asked me to dance. The worst, the absolute lowest point, was my junior year. I'd won the County Academic Excellence Award for a research paper I'd written on marine biology. It was a huge deal. My name was going to be in the local paper. The ceremony was on a Tuesday night. I sat there in the cavernous high school auditorium, in my best dress, my acceptance speech clutched in my sweaty hands. The principal called my name. I walked across the stage, shook his hand, and accepted the plaque, my eyes scanning the rows of smiling, proud parents, searching for the two faces that mattered most. The chairs they were supposed to be in were empty. When I got home, the house was dark except for the flickering glow of the television. My heart, which had been a lead weight in my chest all evening, sank to the floor. I found them on the couch, eyes glued to the screen, cheering. They had missed my award ceremony, a once-in-a-lifetime achievement, to watch a live stream of Olivia's routine college volleyball game. A game where she spent all but 3 minutes on the bench. "We'll make it up to you, honey," my dad had said, his eyes never leaving the screen. "Great serve, Liv," he yelled. They never did make it up to me. I never said anything to my grandfather. For the past year, ever since my grandmother's funeral, he had been wrapped in his own quiet grief. I didn't want to burden him with my family's petty dramas. But now, seeing him stand there, I realized he hadn't just been grieving. He'd been watching. Since Grandma was gone, he started visiting more, showing up unannounced. I'd catch him looking at me with this profound sadness in his eyes, a look I didn't understand until tonight. He wasn't just visiting, he was gathering evidence. A specific memory, a detail that had been buried under years of louder injustices, suddenly surfaced with chilling clarity. A few years ago, I had walked in on a screaming match between my mom and Olivia about something trivial, a borrowed sweater, I think. My mom, at the end of her rope, had thrown her hands up in the air and yelled, "God, I wish things had just been different." Olivia had stormed off to her room. My mom turned and saw me standing in the hallway. Her face went pale, and a strange, unreadable expression crossed her features before she turned and walked away without a word. At the time, I thought her frustration was aimed at Olivia. Now, standing in the wreckage of my 18th birthday, a cold dread washed over me. What if she hadn't been talking about Olivia at all? My grandfather finally moved. He walked through the crowd, and a path parted for him as if he were Moses and the party guests were the Red Sea. The obnoxious music seemed to quiet down, the bass fading into a nervous hum. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His presence alone sucked the air out of the room. He stopped directly in front of my parents, his eyes as cold and hard as chips of ice. "This is a lovely party," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "Whose is it?" My father stammered, his face turning a blotchy, unattractive red. "Dad, it's for Emma. It's her 18th. He couldn't even look my grandfather in the eye. "Really?" My grandfather's gaze swept the room, lingering on the mountains of sushi, the gaudy gold decorations that were Olivia's favorite color, and finally, on Olivia herself, who was now glaring at him, her arms crossed defensively. "It doesn't look like her party. It looks like you catered to a 23-year-old's tantrum." "Well, you know, Olivia's trip was cancelled, and she was so upset," my mother began, her voice a pathetic, wheedling whine. "We just wanted to cheer her up. We didn't think Emma would mind." "Cheer her up?" The words were soft, but they hit like stones. By erasing her sister? That was all it took. The dam of restraint I had so carefully constructed over 18 years didn't just break, it exploded. All the years of swallowing my disappointment, of smiling through the slights, of being the good, understanding daughter, it all came rushing out in a torrent of pure, unadulterated rage. "Erase me?" I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that made several people flinch. You think this is the first time? This is just the grand finale. What about my awards ceremony? Did you cheer Olivia up that night too by watching her sit on a bench? What about every single birthday I've ever had, where I got her leftovers? What about the fact that I am wearing a dress I bought with my own money from my part-time job because you spent hundreds on her concert tickets last month? I was shouting now, my voice raw. The guests started to back away, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. This was better than reality TV. Olivia, of course, couldn't stand not being the center of attention, even if that attention was negative. She stepped forward, her face twisted in a sneer. Oh, stop being so dramatic, Emma. You're just a spoiled, ungrateful brat. You have no idea what real problems are. Try having your New York trip cancelled. I'm spoiled? I screamed, pointing a shaking finger at her. I've worked since I was 16 to pay for my own things. You're the one who demanded they ruin my party because your precious vacation got rained on. You're 23 years old, Olivia. When are you going to grow up and stop acting like the world owes you everything? Don't you dare talk to your sister like that, my father yelled, stepping in front of Olivia as if to physically shield her from my words. And that's when it happened. The centerpiece of the dessert table was a beautiful, multi-layered chocolate cake with raspberry filling. The one thing I had insisted on. The one thing my grandfather had specifically ordered and paid for himself. Olivia, in a fit of pure, childish rage at being called out, turned and shoved it. Time seemed to slow down. The cake wobbled, tilted, and then slid off the table, landing with a sickening, wet splat on the hardwood floor. A brown smear of broken dreams and buttercream. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. Everyone stared at the mess on the floor. Then, my grandfather moved again. He walked past my stunned parents, past my heaving, panting sister, and came to stand directly in front of me. He ignored the cake, ignored the gawking guests, ignored everyone but me. He placed a steady, warm hand on my shoulder. His touch was an anchor in the storm of my emotions. Go pack a bag, he said, his voice low and firm, cutting through the silence. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. A rescue. You're coming with me. I looked at Olivia's face, contorted with fury. I looked at my parents, who were staring at my grandfather with pure, unadulterated terror, the raw fear of a child about to have their allowance cut off. They weren't looking at me. They weren't worried about losing their daughter. They were worried about losing their benefactor. In that moment, something inside me shifted, settled, and hardened into steel. The tears that had been threatening to fall evaporated. The rage cooled into a calm, clear certainty. I just nodded. I turned my back on all of them, the ruined party, the smashed cake, the family that was never really mine, and walked up the stairs to pack my bag. I didn't look back once. The car ride to my grandfather's house was silent, but it was a comfortable silence, not an awkward one. He didn't push me to talk, just occasionally reached over from the driver's seat and gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. His house was quiet and smelled of old books, lemon polish, and something safe. It was a world away from the chaotic, cloying atmosphere of my parents' home. It felt like a sanctuary. He led me to the guest room, a lovely space with a four-poster bed, a thick Persian rug, and a window overlooking his meticulously kept garden. This is your room now, Emma, he said softly. For as long as you want it. That night, for the first time in as long as I could remember, I slept through the entire night, a deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning, the dam of denial my parents lived behind finally broke, and the flood of their panic came pouring through my phone. The first call came at 7:03 a.m. I stared at my mother's name on the screen and let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text. Mom, Emma, we need to talk. This has gone too far. Your father is very upset. I stared at the message, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping my lips. He was upset. The audacity was breathtaking. Then came another call. And another. Around noon, my grandfather found me in the kitchen and gently guided me into his study. The room was lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with law books, a testament to his long, successful career. He was a man who understood contracts, consequences, and leverage. "I need to tell you a few things, Emma," he said, his face serious as he sat behind his large mahogany desk. "So you understand the position you're in. And more importantly, the position they're in." He explained it all, calmly and methodically. The house they lived in? It was in his name. The charming little flower shop my mother ran, her source of pride and pocket money? He was the primary investor and silent partner. He had co-signed the business loan, and his name was on the lease for the storefront. For years, he had been quietly supplementing my father's mediocre salary, a fact he'd hidden to protect my father's pride. He'd even pulled some strings to help my father get a promotion a few years back, a detail that made my stomach turn. He had paid for Olivia's tuition, her car, her insurance, her endless shopping sprees. He had done it all for my grandmother, who had always preached about keeping the family together, no matter the cost. But my grandmother was gone. "They are not financially independent, Emma," he stated, not with malice, but with a lawyer's precision. "They are dependent on my goodwill. And last night, they exhausted it. I spoke with your father this morning. I informed him that as of today, all financial support is terminated. They have 30 days to vacate my house." As if on cue, my phone buzzed on the desk between us. A long, rambling text from my dad. "Dad, Emma, you don't understand the pressure we're under. Olivia is just more fragile. She needs more from us. You've always been so strong, so independent. We always knew we could count on you to handle things. We thought you'd understand. You need to call your grandfather and tell him to be reasonable. He's threatening to pull his support from the business. Your mother is a wreck. You're tearing this family apart." I read the words, and I felt nothing but a cold, hard clarity. They weren't apologizing. They weren't begging for their daughter to come home. They were deploying me, their last-ditch effort, to negotiate the terms of their surrender. They wanted me to fix the mess they had made, to put myself back in the line of fire so they could remain comfortable. For the first time in my life, I felt the intoxicating power of silence. I looked at my grandfather, and he gave me a small, approving nod. I put my phone on airplane mode. I spent the rest of the day with him, helping him prune the roses in the garden, listening to his stories about my grandmother. I felt a peace I hadn't realized I was missing. I was free. They just didn't know it yet. The peace didn't last long. A few days later, I learned the hard way that a cornered, entitled animal is the most dangerous kind. Olivia, stripped of her financial safety net and facing the terrifying prospect of having to live within her means, was spiraling. Her desperation, however, didn't manifest as self-reflection or regret. It curdled into pure, unadulterated rage, and she aimed it all squarely at me. I was at my part-time job at the Daily Grind, a cozy little coffee shop near my high school. It was my space, a place where I was known as Emma, the girl who makes the perfect latte, not Olivia's little sister. I was behind the counter, laughing with my friend and coworker, Liam, about a ridiculous customer order. Liam was a good guy. He was quiet, a linebacker on the school's football team, but he was one of the most observant people I knew. He understood what my family was like without me ever having to say much. The bell on the door jingled violently, and the happy atmosphere in the shop instantly evaporated. In stormed Olivia. Her hair was a mess, her makeup was smeared, and her eyes were wild. She bypassed the line of waiting customers and marched straight to the counter, slamming her hands down on it. "There you are," she spat, her voice loud enough to make the entire shop go quiet. "Hiding out and playing barista while you ruin our family." I froze, the stainless steel milk pitcher suddenly heavy in my hand. "Olivia, This is my job. You need to leave. Now. Leave? She let out a shrill, hysterical laugh that grated on my nerves. I'm not going anywhere until you fix this. Grandpa cut us off. Do you hear me? He's selling the house. He's closing Mom's shop. All because of your pathetic little temper tantrum. My manager, a kind but no-nonsense woman named Sarah, started to move toward us from her office in the back. But Liam, who was standing beside me, subtly put a hand out to stop her, shaking his head slightly. He was quiet, but I saw him discreetly prop his phone up against the sugar shakers on the counter, the camera lens pointing directly at Olivia. With a flick of his thumb, he pressed record. This has nothing to do with me, Olivia, I said, my voice shaking but firm. I would not let her see me cry. This is about your behavior. Your choices. Your consequences. My choices? She shrieked, her voice cracking. You're the one who ran off with that old man's money. You're a thief. A gold digger. You probably stole from them for years, that's why he's protecting you. You manipulated him. The accusation hung in the air, ugly, poisonous, and absurd. The customers were staring, their own phones now magically appearing in their hands, their faces a mixture of shock and glee. This was a public spectacle. A public execution, and I was the one on the chopping block. I tried to turn away, to walk into the back room and escape her venom, but she was too fast. She lunged across the counter, her manicured nails digging into the fabric of my apron, yanking me forward so hard my chest hit the edge of the counter. You are going to call him and you are going to fix this. That's when Sarah and Liam both moved at once. Sarah was on the phone, her voice sharp and clear, all business. I need security at the front of the shop. Immediately. We have a hostile individual assaulting an employee. Liam stepped between us, easily breaking Olivia's grip with one hand while keeping his body between hers and mine. He was a wall of calm, protective muscle. He never laid a hand on her, but his presence was an immovable barrier. That's enough, he said, his voice a low growl that promised consequences she didn't want to face. Olivia, thwarted and realizing she had lost all control, completely lost it. She let out a scream of pure, animalistic frustration and tried to shove past Liam to get to me again. Just then, 2 large security guards from the mall arrived, flanking her on either side. They each took an arm, and she was unceremoniously escorted out, still screaming insults and threats, a whirlwind of impotent fury. The coffee shop was silent for a beat, and then it erupted in a low murmur of whispers. My face was burning with a shame so intense I felt dizzy. Liam stopped the recording on his phone and showed it to Sarah, who watched it with a grim expression. Don't you worry about a thing, Emma, she said, her hand on my shoulder, her voice firm. We have it all on video. I'm filing a police report for assault and a restraining order on your behalf. She won't be bothering you here again. I thought that was the worst of it. I thought public humiliation and a police report would be her rock bottom. But I was wrong. The text message I received from my parents later that night proved that rock bottom had a basement, and they were busy excavating. It wasn't an apology for Olivia's behavior. It wasn't a question asking if I was okay. It was a single, cold, typed-out sentence that severed the last thread of hope I didn't even know I was holding on to. Parents, after what you've put this family through, we are done. Don't contact us again. You are no longer our daughter. I stared at the screen, the words blurring through a sudden film of tears. A strange, hollow sense of calm washed over me. It was over. Really, finally over. Later that evening, my grandfather found me sitting in the dark in his study, just staring out the window. He didn't turn on the light. He just sat in the leather armchair across from me, the silence stretching between us. He must have known, somehow, that I had received the final verdict. I have something I need to show you, Emma, he said, his voice heavy with a sorrow that felt ancient. I should have done this years ago. Your grandmother, she made me promise to wait until you were 18. She said you needed to be an adult to handle it. I think she was wrong. I think I should have protected you sooner. He didn't just tell me. He knew that words could be twisted, but some things were undeniable. He went to a locked drawer in his large mahogany desk and pulled out a small, worn, wooden box. It was simple, unadorned, but it felt heavy with history. He placed it on the table between us. Inside was a stack of yellowed letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon, and a few old, black and white photographs. These were from your other grandparents, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Your mother's parents. He handed me the box. He explained everything. That my parents had me by accident. They were young, selfish, and had planned to terminate the pregnancy. My maternal grandparents, who apparently adored my mother, begged them not to. They promised to help in every way. They offered financial support, a down payment on a house, everything. They just wanted their grandchild to have a chance at life. Then, when my mother was 6 months pregnant with me, they were killed in a horrific car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light. The inheritance they had promised, the emotional and financial support system they represented, vanished overnight. Your parents. My grandfather paused, choosing his words with a lawyer's care. They saw it as a bad omen. They resented you before you were even born. They blamed you. After you were born, they were going to put you up for adoption. My blood ran cold. Adoption. The word echoed in the silent room. Your father's parents, my wife and I, we wouldn't allow it. We threatened to fight for custody. We made them keep you. We thought, we hoped, they would learn to love you. His voice broke on the last word, and he looked away, his own grief and regret a palpable thing in the room. It's my greatest failure, Emma. That I let you stay in that house for so long. He pushed one of the letters toward me. It was from my maternal grandmother, written just a week before she died. I unfolded the brittle paper, my hands shaking. Her handwriting was a beautiful, looping cursive, full of life. My dearest daughter, it began. I can't wait to meet your little Emma. I can already feel she's a special soul. I've already started a college fund for her, and your father and I have been looking at houses for you nearby. I know you're scared, but she is a gift. A blessing. Please, love her for us. When you hold her, know that you are holding all of our love. Love her, because she is a part of us, and a part of you. I read the letter, and the truth settled over me, not like a bomb, but like a slow, quiet blanket of snow, covering everything, muffling the noise, and explaining everything. The slights, the neglect, the constant feeling of being an outsider in my own home. I wasn't unloved because I was unlovable. I was unloved because, to them, I was a living reminder of a tragedy, a burden they were forced to carry. The tears that came weren't for the parents I had lost tonight. They were for the grandparents I never got to meet, for the boundless love I was meant to have. I cried until I was empty, my grandfather sitting silently with me the whole time. And when I was done, I picked up my phone, looked at my parents' last message one more time, and I pressed block. I blocked Olivia's number too. I didn't do it with anger. I did it with the quiet finality of closing a book I had finished reading. The story was over. It was time to write a new one. The year that followed was one of quiet reconstruction. It was like learning to walk again after being in a cast for my entire life, testing my own weight, my own strength. The first few months were a blur of college applications, late-night talks with my grandfather, and learning to trust the solid ground beneath my feet. Liam was a constant, steady presence. He didn't try to fix me, he just sat with me in the quiet, a silent promise that I wasn't alone. He took me to my senior prom. I wore a simple blue dress that I loved, and for the first time, I felt like a normal teenager, not a walking casualty of a family war. My grandfather was my rock. He helped me navigate the FAFSA forms, told me stories about my grandmother, and taught me how to make her famous lasagna. Our bond, once a quiet undercurrent, became the central pillar of my life. He was more of a parent to me in that 1 year than my own had been in 18. The acceptance letter to my dream university arrived on a sunny Tuesday in April. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my grandfather, both of us staring at the email on my laptop screen, tears welling up in our eyes. It wasn't just an acceptance, it was a validation. It was proof that I could have a future that wasn't defined by my past. That evening, after a celebratory dinner, my grandfather handed me a small, ornate key. "Your maternal grandparents left you a small trust," he explained, his voice gentle. "It wasn't a huge inheritance, but they wanted you to have a start in life. A place of your own. The college fund they started grew over the years. I've been managing it for you. This," he said, pushing the key across the table, "is for a small apartment near campus. It's yours, Emma. A gift from the people who wanted you from the very beginning." The consequences for my old family were not something I sought out, but news travels fast in our small town. The flower shop closed down 6 months after I left. Without my grandfather's backing, my parents couldn't secure another loan. They had to sell the house, my grandfather's house, and move into a cramped rental on the other side of town. I heard from Sarah that my father had lost his job shortly after. Turns out that promotion he got years ago was contingent on my grandfather's friend staying on the board of directors. That friend retired. One afternoon, about a year after I'd left, Liam and I were driving through the old neighborhood. We passed the empty storefront, a for lease sign taped to the dusty window. It looked so small and sad. I didn't feel a surge of victory or a bitter sense of "I told you so." I just felt nothing. It was a chapter from someone else's life. We held hands, and he kept driving, and we didn't talk about it again. From mutual acquaintances, I heard that Olivia's life had also unraveled. Without the endless flow of cash, her fair-weather friends had disappeared. She had to get a real job, a humiliating prospect she resented deeply. The strain had fractured her relationship with my parents. Apparently, the golden child wasn't so golden when she was expected to actually contribute. The thought of their new, cramped life, filled with resentment and blame, didn't bring me joy. It just brought a profound sense of pity, and an even more profound sense of gratitude for my escape. My new life is taking shape, built on a foundation of love, not obligation. My apartment is filled with second-hand furniture, photos of my friends, and the constant, comforting smell of coffee. It's small, but it's all mine. Liam and I are stronger than ever, navigating college life together, a team. My relationship with my grandfather is the most precious thing I have. He comes over for dinner every Sunday, and we talk for hours. He's my family. My real family. The other day, I was unpacking the last box of my things from my grandfather's house. At the bottom was the small wooden box with the letters from my maternal grandparents. I took out the picture of them, a smiling couple, their arms around each other, looking at the camera with so much hope and love in their eyes. I bought a simple silver frame and put it on my nightstand, right next to a recent picture of me, my grandfather, and Liam, all of us laughing at some silly joke at my housewarming. I look at it every night before I go to sleep. I've realized that family isn't always about the blood you share. Sometimes, it's about the people who show up when everyone else walks away. It's about the people who see you, who fight for you, and who give you a safe place to rebuild. I was never an unwanted burden. I was a cherished gift that had simply been delivered to the wrong address. And now, finally, I'm home. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It wasn't easy to share, but I feel like someone out there needed to hear it. My question for you is, have you ever had to choose your own family? Let me know your story in the comments below. And if my story resonated with you, please give this video a like and subscribe for more. It would mean the world to me.